Welcome back to another episode of Me and My Health Up. I'm the healthy man, Anthony Hartcher, a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today I'll be doing that just for you. I'm going to be talking about the truths and the myths of cholesterol. Yes, I've been seeing lots of clients recently that are concerned about their cholesterol levels. So I've been sharing with them education around cholesterol, what it is, what it does, how it serves, and it's not all bad after all. So I wanted to share with you some of the education I share with my clients so that you're empowered around the conversation of cholesterol. Because as you know, it can send alarm bells when you get a blood test that is elevated cholesterol. And yes, I'm one of those people that have on the cusp of, being too high. I'm sort of a bit over the borderline of high cholesterol. So I can relate to those out there that may have that concerning cholesterol marker. So what can you do about it? What is cholesterol? How does it serve the body? Some of the myths I'm going to bust today. I'm going to share some truths, some known facts, and you're going to get empowered around cholesterol. So let's start this episode with what is cholesterol. Cholesterol is a sterol. It's a lipid, so it's a fat, okay? And yes, it's contained within foods, but one of the biggest myths is foods that contain cholesterol, avoid. It's alarm bells. However, our body uses acetylcholine as a precursor to manufacture cholesterol. And you're probably thinking, what's acetylcholine? And acetylcholine, where does it come from? What foods contain acetylcholine? Well, essentially, it's part of the metabolism of foods that break down to acetylcholine. So if we consume carbohydrates through a process of glycolysis, which is the breakdown of carbohydrates, it goes down to that precursor molecule, acetylcholine. Same as fats. Fats form acetylcholine through a process called beta oxidation. So those that are on the keto aren't immune from acetylcholine. You'll produce acetylcholine from fats, and that we can derive energy from acetylcholine. So that's not the enemy either, okay? And again, as a nutritionist, I don't like these labels. I really don't like labels around foods, labels around conditions, because it boxes us. And there's a bigger picture behind the label. There's a human behind the label, and there's nutritional value behind a label on food. And you can label it good or bad. However, it's got both. Okay. And same with medical labels. Again, there's a human and they aren't the condition. So let's get into this acetylcholine. And also when we break down protein, so those on a high protein diet will also form acetylcholine via the Krebs cycle. Okay. So it's not a bad thing. Acetylcholine, our liver uses it as a precursor with some B3 derivatives, nicotinamide, to manufacture cholesterol. And cholesterol serves us in the body. Our liver wouldn't be making it if it didn't serve us. So what is cholesterol used for in the body? It's used to produce hormones such as testosterone, sexual hormone binding globulin, which binds to our sex hormones. It also is used as a precursor to vitamin D, which you all know about vitamin D. We synthesize that in the body too. And it's one of those factors that are required to synthesize vitamin D in the body is sunlight on the skin. But we certainly use cholesterol in the liver in order to make the precursor to vitamin D. Okay, so vitamin D, well, we need cholesterol for that. You know about your sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, come from the backbone of cholesterol. Okay, we also use cholesterol to repair patches in our arteries. Okay, and that's the concern when you have too much LDL, which is low density lipoprotein. Low density, it's a derivative of cholesterol. When we have high levels of that, too much go in to do the repair work and accumulate on that patch, and that can block the artery. Okay, so there's an issue there that we know that is associated with inflammation, that is causing damage to the arteries, or high blood pressure that's causing damage to the arteries. Hence, all this repair work needs to happen, and this accumulation of LDL plaques build up, and that forms atherosclerosis, which is a condition that you've probably heard about, which is part of heart disease. So it serves in the body. We need it. However, we don't need it in excessive quantities, and we want our body to be regulating it. Okay, so it serves a purpose. It's useful. We need to balance it and support the body to help balance the cholesterol levels. Okay, so that's really important. We need to do that. Now, you're probably thinking, do I need to be concerned about high cholesterol? Well, leading cardiologist, Dr. Ross Walker, says it's a bit, he's more concerned about the risk factors associated that coincide with high cholesterol that leads to heart disease. What are those risk factors? Okay, so the risk factors he talks about: excessive alcohol consumption, so more than that standard drink a night, and binge drinking and drinking for years upon years upon years is something that you don't want to be doing. Okay, that is a risk factor. So smoking is another risk factor. Okay, not exercising, living a sedentary lifestyle is another risk factor. Drugs, another risk factor. And you can see there's some common elements around these risk factors. They all put a huge load on the liver to process these toxins, and the liver doesn't work well. Okay, it's so busy processing the toxins, it doesn't have much resources to do anything else, such as help manage and regulate the levels of cholesterol. Okay, and the other thing is that all those things that I mentioned, like if you're sedentary, you're taking drugs or smoking or drinking, these factors, and a crappy diet's the other one. A crappy diet, so an inflammatory diet. So you've probably heard of the inflammatory diet: eating high amounts of processed foods, excessive consumption of foods, eating trans fats, like lots of fried foods. It's very inflammatory on the body. High amounts of sugar, okay, inflammatory. Okay, and then the things that don't support, regulated blood pressure, such as not having emotional regulation, okay, and being stressed out. So stress is another factor, another concern, another risk factor. So if you've got those risk factors and coinciding with high levels of blood cholesterol, then you're at risk of heart disease, okay? So you can manage those risk factors. And this is what I'm going to be talking about today, is the management of those risk factors, what you can do about it around your diet, your lifestyle, to support a healthy heart ultimately, and to help the body regulate cholesterol. It's an alternative to taking the drug statin. So you've probably heard of all the statin drugs that are available that typically get prescribed by the GP when you have elevated cholesterol. And I'm not against taking statins, because if you not wanting to give up the lifestyle in terms of all those risk factors I mentioned, then that is going to be supportive to you taking that statin. So yes, statins serve a place in health and well-being for those that aren't willing to take the action, the lifestyle changes, make the lifestyle changes, make the dietary changes, get emotional support, get back in control of your emotions, those sort of things. If you're not willing to do that and you have elevated cholesterol, then you're at risk of heart disease. Okay. And I don't want that. So certainly if you're not willing to change any of those risk factors that I mentioned, such as eating crappy foods, highly processed foods, highly fatty foods, highly sugary foods, drinking copious amounts of alcohol, binge drinking, smoking, drug taking, sedentary couch type lifestyle. If you're not willing to give up them and change, and you have high cholesterol, absolutely, statins serve their place in someone's health and well-being. So take your doctor's advice. What I'm sharing today is the alternative. If you're willing to make the changes, willing to make the lifestyle changes, and willing to make the nutritional changes, and willing to support your emotions. Okay, so that's what I'm sharing with you today. And also the myths around, such as food with cholesterol is bad. Okay, so that, so I've heard people say, I can't eat prawns, they've got high in cholesterol, I've got cholesterol issues. Hey, foods aren't the major source of cholesterol. As I said, the precursor to cholesterol is acetylcholine, and we get that through the metabolism of foods. Okay, so it's not necessarily the foods that have high cholesterol that are really the enemy. In saying that, I must say that eating excessive amounts of fatty foods, such as if you're doing the keto or eating a high fat diet for whatever reason, then you may notice that you have increasing levels. And I've seen clients that are on the keto diet, that eating excessive amounts of fat, have elevated levels of cholesterol. So yes, there is if you overconsume fatty foods, you will most likely have elevated cholesterol, particularly if you're not eating much fiber, because fiber is one of the ways in which we get cholesterol out of the body. And one of the other things I didn't mention earlier is one of the benefits of cholesterol serves to the body in its purpose is it makes up bile. So we create bile in the liver using cholesterol. Okay, so that's one of the uses of cholesterol in the body, is to make bile. And what's bile used for? It's used for fat absorption. Okay, so it's how we metabolize how we get fats into our body to be processed. And yes, fats aren't all bad. Okay, we need fats. Also, cholesterol's used in the cell membrane. Every cell membrane has cholesterol, and it's used to keep the cell membrane fluid. Okay, so, and that fluidity of the cell membrane allows nutrients in and out. So it allows food into the cell, and it allows waste products out of the cell. If we don't have cholesterol, we have a rigid membrane, cellular membrane, and we don't get that nourishment uptake, and the cell gets quite toxic. So we need that nice fluidity of the cell membrane. Also, did you know that 20% of our brain, 20 to 25%, depending on where you get your research from, of cholesterol within the body is in the brain? Can you believe that? We all want to be smart and intelligent. Well, 20 to 25% of your cholesterol is in the brain. So you're probably thinking, what does the brain need cholesterol? Yes, our neurons synthesize cholesterol. Okay, so they manufacture cholesterol. Why do they do that? Why does the brain need cholesterol? Well, the majority of the cholesterol, 70 to 80% of the cholesterol within the brain, is used to synthesize or manufacture myelin sheaths. So they're like an insulation to the axon, and the axon conducts the impulse. Okay, so when you're thinking, you have thoughts. Impulses are firing across, to neurons, into neurons through axons. Okay, so when I'm moving, when I'm talking, all this, I'm firing these. I'm sending these electrical pulses along these axons, which are insulated by myelin sheaths, and those myelin sheaths are cholesterol. Okay, so we need cholesterol in our brain as well. It serves a purpose in our brain, so it's not all bad. Okay, yes, the cholesterol that we sort of get concerned about is excessive amounts of LDL, which I mentioned is low density lipoprotein. Okay, and that's the one that we want to make sure that's not too elevated or excessively elevated, because if there's inflammation, again, it needs to coincide with inflammation or elevated blood pressure, which is putting huge amounts of stress on the arteries, which could and may cause damage to the arteries, which will then need patchwork, which we use LDL for to patch up the arteries. But again, if there's lots of LDL, it floods to that site that's been damaged, and it starts stacking up. And then it starts clogging the artery, which we know as atherosclerosis. And that clogging of the artery is not good, because the blood, the oxygen, struggles to get through that space, and we can have a heart attack. So that's what we don't want. And certainly you're probably thinking, what can I do about it if I have elevated cholesterol? Again, you want to be also thinking about have you got any of the risk factors? What can you do about the risk factors? Because you can work on them. They're things you can do. If you want to make change, they're the areas that you can change. Again, there's genetic factors that can derive in, I have a family history of elevated cholesterol. So yes, it's in my family history, but I don't have any of the risk factors. Okay. So I manage my elevated cholesterol through a healthy lifestyle, eating well, And I'm going to get into what you can do in terms of a healthy lifestyle and eating well and how you can manage elevated cholesterol. But again, this is not taking you away from the advice that the doctor's given you. It complements. So even if the doctor says take a statin, I'm not saying don't take the statin. I'm saying, well, reduce the risk factors and further lower the risk of heart disease. And what I'm sharing with you will also help with the management of blood pressure. So again, we work together. This is all working together with you and the doctor, me and the medical system. We work together. It's a teamwork. It's a teamwork approach for ultimately improving your health and well-being. So let's start talking about what you can do around the risk factors. So alcohol. Have you thought about why you drink alcohol? Is it that you're not coping? Maybe you can seek some support. Okay, maybe you might need some help in that area if you're not coping. And alcohol is a coping mechanism. So as I said in previous podcasts, if we're not living a life aligned to our values and we're living by other people's values, by allowing them to dictate what our life should be and us not living a life that we want, that submissive, sort of subordinate, sort of to someone else, a superior, then that can cause stress within the body. That can cause anger and resentment in the body. That anger and resentment can result in elevated blood pressure. And anger affects the ability for our liver to function. So the Chinese medicine Chinese medicine teaches that in terms of anger is associated with, I guess, not optimal liver function. So again, if you're having problems expressing yourself or you've got a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, then liver function may be impeded. And again, on top of that, if you're using alcohol as a coping mechanism because you're dissatisfied with life is not meaningful to you, then that is extra load on the liver because the liver's processing the alcohol and it's not performing well overall. It's spending too much energy on getting toxins out of the body, and it doesn't do the other work it needs to do, such as use cholesterol to synthesize hormones, to manufacture bile. So it doesn't do that well when it's really focused, preoccupied on trying to get toxins out of the body. So by getting help with your emotions, you are essentially supporting your liver. Again, acupuncture can be really helpful to optimizing liver function, supporting good liver. There's other practices that we can do, such as eating well to support the liver function. So eating lots of vegetables, a wide variety of vegetables, lots of colors of the rainbow, making sure you're getting whole grains into your diet, making sure vitamin C's there. So in order to metabolize cholesterol, we need vitamin B6, we need vitamin C and zinc, some of the key cofactors, as well as vitamin B3 in order to metabolize cholesterol. So if you're not eating much fruit in your diet, for example, which is a significant source of vitamin C, then you might be lacking in vitamin C and the body might not have the cofactor there to metabolize cholesterol. If you're not consuming much protein, and zinc is bound to protein, then again, you might have a really stressed out lifestyle, which is a risk factor to atherosclerosis or heart disease, or coinciding with high cholesterol, a risk factor. So if you've got that, then again, it's going to really affect you. So making sure that you're eating a wide variety of foods that are going to cover those micronutrients. And again, it's moderation. It's not excessive consumption of any particular food group. It's not just diving into eating fats and neglecting carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are a great source of fiber, okay? That's where we get our fiber from, is carbohydrates. And fiber helps lower cholesterol. So what happens is that the bile binds to the fiber and we poo out the bile, essentially, because it gets stuck with the fiber. So eating high fiber is, having good fiber in your diet, and, not just eating fats, having fiber in your diet helps lower cholesterol. Again, excessive amount of fats, it's going to result in elevated levels of cholesterol. You're also reducing fiber by having elevated fats. Okay. So I'm hoping you're getting that picture that having a really broad diet is going to cover the cofactors that we need to manufacture or break down cholesterol. And by not having excessive consumption of any particular food group is also beneficial. So, like when we eat too much of anything, it's going to put, so for example, coffee consumption. So, coffee consumption contains caffeine. How do we break down caffeine? We break it down through our liver. So, if our liver is busy breaking down alcohol and caffeine, so caffeine during the day to stimulate you, and then alcohol at night to knock you out, to calm you down because you've had too much coffee during the day, then that's putting a burden on the liver. Okay, so, and then we also need to complement this with good sleep in order to allow the liver to regenerate, to rejuvenate, to allow the regeneration of cells so that cells are operating well, so that the organs are operating well, systems are operating well, so that we can manage elevated levels of cholesterol. If our systems aren't working well and we're not supporting our systems through good health, then it's going to have a trouble and difficulty getting rid of or secreting cholesterol. Okay, so we really want to make sure we're eating a wide variety of foods. Lots of colors in the vegetables support good liver function. And that also contains fiber, which helps with taking out bile. And as you know, cholesterol makes up bile. So if we take out bile through our bowels, then the body's going to make more, or use cholesterol to make more bile. Okay, one way in which we can encourage our body to better regulate cholesterol levels is through eating fiber. Okay, so eat more fiber in your diet. Eat wide variety, lots of colors, fruit and vegetables. As I said, fruits contain vitamin C, in particular kiwi fruits, oranges, citrus fruits. Berries contain vitamin C. Kale contains vitamin C. So, making sure that you have a wide variety of sources, you're getting your vitamin C in, and you're supporting good liver function, because vegetables and also contain a lot of nutrients or micronutrients that are cofactors in helping the liver to process toxins. And we need protein also to help the metabolism or the breakdown of toxins in our liver. So making sure your diet's not too low in protein. Some people aren't eating enough protein. So making sure you're eating a wide variety of protein sources. Another way in which you can reduce cholesterol is through having fish, oily fish in particular, like say those fish. Having more fish as a protein source in your diet is another way in which you can help regulate cholesterol. In terms of other dietary factors, definitely recommend water consumption, because water helps flush out toxins out of our body. Okay, so we don't want toxins building up. If toxins build up in our body, it results in inflammation. As I said, inflammation is one of the things that coincides with excessive amounts of LDL, and that's required to do the repair work that results in those plaques forming in the arteries, which we don't want. So we want to manage inflammation. And so it's really important that you help the body excrete toxins in order to manage inflammation. What else can we do? So I've talked a fair bit about diet. So the foods that are recommended around diet, oats, barley. What else is there? There's soy, there's orca, which is a vegetable, there's eggplant. These are really help with the excretion of, binding to bile and helping it. So having like a porridge for breakfast is a really good way to start the day. And then having your mixture of vegetables and having fruit throughout the day, really helpful. And then having regular amounts of protein. So protein with each meal is really supportive. And eating less processed foods, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, and less fried foods. We don't want the fried foods. Okay. So that's pretty much covered the dietary aspects of what you can do to manage cholesterol. Let's talk about what you can do around a sedentary lifestyle. Exercise. Any particular type of exercise? Well, there's research that shows that high intensity interval training, so HIIT training, is really helpful. Resistance training is really helpful. And then just moving the body is really helpful, because moving the body is a way in which we eliminate toxins. As I said, we don't want toxins building up, creates inflammation, puts a load on the liver. It puts us at risk if we have elevated cholesterol. So moving the body by just walking, again, walking can really help with, particularly walking with a friend, can help manage emotions, doing exercises, mindfulness exercises such as yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, or all ways in which we can add exercise plus mindfulness. Mindfulness is really helpful for that emotional control. As I said, emotions will elevate our blood pressure, which can cause artery damage for prolonged period if blood pressure is elevated for a prolonged period of time. Also, our emotions, particularly if it's sort of that anger and resentment and frustrated, affect the liver function, which the liver is the processing center for utilizing cholesterol and manufacturing cholesterol. But, it's the manufacturing center to actually make the hormones from cholesterol to make the precursor to vitamin D in the liver. We use, from cholesterol. And so we need to support good liver function. The liver also produces the bile. It's the manufacturing center. We need to look after our manufacturing center, because it's the way in which we're going to help, get cholesterol regulated. Again, it's not about eliminating cholesterol. It's not about that. The cholesterol is not bad. It serves us. It's about managing the levels of cholesterol. So I've spoken about diet and now exercise. I've spoken a bit about emotional control, but really important that, as I said, if you need support, reach out, get support, start living by what's important to you, start living a life aligned to your values, and that will help with emotional regulations. Starting to look for a balanced perspective as opposed to a one-sided perspective, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. So if you're seeing things as negative, ask yourself, what is the benefits of that event that you're perceiving as negative? So balance your perspectives, then you'll calm the amygdala or the emotional center down. So that's another way of doing it. So asking yourself in times that you're perceiving negativity, what is the benefits? How is it serving me and what I value? Or if it's a past event that you still haven't got over, how has the past event from that point up until now served me and my values and in the areas of my life? Ask yourself that question and keep asking yourself the question until the emotion calms down. So that's really important. Also, when you have an inflated ego or a inflated sense of self or perception of self, and you're looking down on others, you might want to quieten that super ego by asking yourself, what are the drawbacks? What are the drawbacks? How is this not serving me? When we're inflated and think we're on top of the world, we sort of stop doing what made us successful, and we stop essentially doing doing the things that made us successful, but also we stop learning, don't we? Because we think we know it all when we're so good. We just crash out. Don't need to keep learning. I'm a master and I'm the best. And so our growth is stunted. And when our growth is stunted, we start to rotten. Once we think we're ripe, we're rotten. So we want to stay green, stay thirsty for hunger and new knowledge and for new opportunities and for ways to grow and ways to serve. How else can you better serve people, better serve humanity? So looking at that higher self and looking at that level of service that you're giving. So really supporting your emotional health that way. So not getting, not subordinating to others or being recessive to others, but also not looking down on others. Seeing people as equal, is really important. And having a balanced perspective. If it's too negative, then ask yourself, what's good about it? How is it serving you? If it's too positive, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? What do I need to investigate or find out more about? There's something I'm not seeing if I just see it as all positive. I'm not seeing the cons. And again, that's a one-sided decision-making process. If you just think it's all positive, you'll jump into it, and you may jump in too early and realize in time that that it wasn't such a great thing to jump into. And we see this time and time again with investments that people make, with cryptocurrency. So really making thoughtful decisions, which is looking at both sides. A thoughtful decision is both sides. It's objectively looking at it objectively as opposed to subjective thinking, which is just one-sided thinking, only looking at one side of person. So just say, if you see someone as all negative, again, you're going to start resenting that person. But if you ask yourself, when have I done what that person has done? Because it's a deflective part of you. And we want reflective. We want a reflective view of the world. We want to see in ourselves, and when we see that in others, and we realize that we're all equal. Whereas if we are disowning parts of us and deflecting it onto others, and too proud to admit that we have it also in us, and just see that they have it, and we have a one-sided perspective of them, and we're not seeing the balance, then that can result in resentful, and then that may result in anger, which causes liver implications. And as I said, the liver implications isn't good. We want an optimal liver function in order to process cholesterol. So that's the emotional side of things. I've shared that. I shared the alcohol. Haven't really spoken about drugs, but drugs and alcohol, we generally go to drugs and alcohol when we're feeling unfulfilled, when we're looking for an outlet, we're looking for an escape. And what I've just shared around doing what's important to you, living a life aligned to your values, you're living an inspired life from within, and you don't need that escape because you are so inspired and enthusiastic and certain and confident from within. So you're not looking for that escape, that drug, that alcohol to escape your reality because you're feeling unfulfilled. You look for alcohol or drugs to get fulfillment, whereas you can get fulfilled from within by living by what's important to you and living by your own values. And that's you being authentic. And then when you're being authentic, you don't need to be anyone else. You don't need to put on masks or personas. You can just be comfortable and in your own skin and know that you're serving a purpose by living out your values. And that's the best value you can deliver to this human race, is by living who you are, because there's no one else like you. You are unique and special. So by living out who you are, you're adding value to the world. You're not trying to copy and emulate someone else. So that, the drugs and alcohol, there's something behind that generally. So getting some help around that so that you can really break the addiction to help your body better manage cholesterol and reduce the factors related to heart disease, the risk factors. I spoke about the exercises, again, just moving your body every day, just doing a little bit every day. Like 30 minutes is not much to dedicate to movement every day. And you can break the 30 minutes up into 10-minute bite-sized chunks. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're just doing 10 minutes, okay? And it's just moving your body. Get out and walk. It's simple. Or get off a bus stop, a couple early before your actual stop, and you've got to walk to the destination. And so just finding ways in which you can move your body more, taking the stairs instead of the escalator or elevator. Again, really important ways to get in incidental exercise. Doing like walk and talk meetings is another way to be productive, as well as getting in some exercise. I do a lot of walk and talk meetings. I find it really elevates my steps. I get my body moving, which, as I said, really helps with eliminating toxins from the body. And it really helps with getting that LDL and HDL ratios. So the high density lipoprotein, HDL, is the one that carries the LDL back to the liver for processing, so the liver can make things from the LDL. That's why we like the sort of ratio of having the sort of higher HDL and the lower LDL, because the HDL takes the LDL back to the liver for processing. And so exercise can help that. Research shows that that is the case. Just wanted to touch on statins. So statins are really well researched. Yes, there are side effects to statins, but in terms of the overall literature, it is supportive. Even taking statins long term, it's shown that it reduces the cases of heart disease. And as I said, particularly for those that aren't willing to make the changes in other areas of their life, that aren't willing to reduce the risk factors, it really helps them in terms of lowering the risk of heart disease. The other myth that I didn't mention earlier was that men are more prone to women than women in relation to high cholesterol. That is a myth. Okay, so high cholesterol also plagues women, and there's no, sex sort of thing that, men suffer it more, and same with heart disease. I mean, equally, heart disease affects women as well. So it's certainly not a man thing. And, women also, probably men are more at risk because generally speaking, women look after their health better and have lower risk factors that coincide with maybe elevated cholesterol, whereas men may have more of the risk factors. And if they've got elevated cholesterol, are more at risk of heart disease. So that's pretty much it for this episode. I really want to thank you for tuning in each week and listening. I would like to take the opportunity to invite feedback. So give me feedback on the podcast. Is there any particular guest or any particular subject matter that you want to hear about? Do you want me to find this specific guest, or do you want me to speak on a specific subject? Please let me know what that is, because I'd love, I'm here to serve you. This is my mission, is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. So by providing me feedback, and again, you can go into the podcast. You'll find my email address. It's info@me&my.wellness.com.au. info@me&my.wellness.com.au. It'll be in the show notes. So reach out to me. Connect with me. Tell me what you like about the show, how it can improve. I'm all about improving this show. I've been running it for over 2 years now, and I've done over 160 episodes. I've had well over 80 guests on the show, and it's a holistic podcast. I really want to grow it. So please, if you've really enjoyed listening to the podcast, please leave a review in the app that you listen to the podcast on. That really helps me reach more people. So leave me a review. So tell others about it. If you're benefiting, then others could also benefit. So please share it with others. And if you'd like further support and further get into health and well-being, then join the Me and My Health Up Club. I've started the Me and My Health Up Club, and I share exclusive information to the Me and My Health Up Club members. And it's a great community of like-minded people where I'm sharing education, they're sharing experience. I'm helping guide them as a well-seerge, as the healthy man, and we live and strive for happier, healthier lives. So if you're wanting a happier, healthier life and constantly lift your wellness sphere or your wellness growth or your wellness quotient, then join the Me and My Health Up Club. I'd love you to be a member, and for essentially a coffee a week, or maybe a coffee and a half a month, actually. Yeah, it's a coffee and a half a month is what it costs you. It's cheap, okay? So it's no big investment. It's really affordable. So please join the Me and My Health Up Club. The link is in the show notes. Jump in. It's right at the bottom of the show notes. Jump into that link. You'll find out more about the Me and My Health Up Club by clicking on the link. Love you to join, and please share your feedback. Have a wonderful week, year, and just signing off as Anthony, the healthy man, and continue to enhance and enlighten your well-being. Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand Me and My Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. Me and My Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you made to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, Me and My Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast, and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason.
No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of Me and My Health Up.